And welcome back, everyone. Episode 56 of the Sports Coverage Podcast. My name is Andrew, and today I'm going to be joined by Daylan of the Daylan Show. I'll introduce him in a second. Had some great talks about college football, the SEC. So if you like that kind of stuff, this is going to be the episode for you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. And over to me and Daylan. All right, and now I'm back joined by Daylan. Daylan here is a student at Ole Miss. He runs the Daylan Show podcast and also works with the Ole Miss podcast, Locked on Ole Miss. So thank you so much, Daylan, for joining me. Ton of stuff going on in college football. The season is just kicking off, so we definitely have a lot to talk about.
Appreciate you for having me, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be a part of the show, and I appreciate you guys for reaching out. Obviously, it's an exciting time all across the country right now, just for college football fans in general. And like you said, I attend Ole Miss, and for me personally, it's just kind of been the most anticipated season of my lifetime because I'm from Arkansas too, and so I don't even really remember, just kind of being this much hype around a team before the start of the season. So I really hope for a fun season to come.
Yeah, definitely. And Ole Miss especially has a lot of talent going into the season. They're ranked pretty high last season. They had an amazing season,
Mm-hmm.
only losing twice to some really great programs. And I think we should start by talking about one of the guys that they're going to be heavily relying on this year, Jackson Dart. He is
Mm-hmm.
being said that he has Heisman potential going into the season, that he is
Yeah.
going to be the guy to lead this Ole Miss offense. What do you think about him, and how do you think he's going to impact this offense this year?
Well, I said a few months ago on the Locked On Ole Miss network with my man Stephen Willis that was one of my goals for this season was for Jackson Dart to be in New York at the end of the season and be a Heisman finalist. We've heard about his presence all off season in terms of being a leader. Lane Kiffin and Pete Golden have talked about it a lot in interviews and press conferences this summer. How much of a leadership role that Jackson has took over in terms of recruiting and making sure we were attacking certain guys in the transfer portal and contacted them on the daily basis. And so I believe Jackson played a huge part in getting the number one transfer portal class in the country this season for us. I think he truly understood what could be the dynamic for this football team this year in terms of that area, and as well a lot of the returning starters from last year's 11-win season coming back to the program. And I love it. I've loved Jackson when he first got here. He was a really raw guy, honestly, coming from USC. Had played a little bit, but dealt with injuries his first year at USC. So we came here, didn't really know a lot about him. No one really did. So he was kind of new to this whole football world in general, and especially to the SEC. In his first year, we saw potential, but we definitely didn't know exactly where he would be at. Last year took tremendously. One of the best quarterbacks in the country, passing yards went up tremendously. His TD to interception ratio was one of the best in the country. His QB rating was one of the best in the country last year. So we saw the leap that an offseason for him in a year under Lane Kiffin got. And I think another year, obviously, is just going to continue to allow him to be more comfortable, allow him to be more confident in what he's doing, and as well just allow him to play his game of football. I think that him and Lane have definitely developed a great relationship with one another, and that only builds better when you're on the field with each other now. So I'm expecting Jackson to have a great year. We have one of the best receiving rooms in the country, and we've developed a lot on the O-line as well to just kind of protect him and give him the time and space he needs to be great. But I'm expecting Jackson to have a lot of fun this year, but to really gun for as much as possible as well.
Yeah, and you're talking about that amazing receiving core. So they were ranked number 2 in the nation for their
Mm-hmm.
receiving core, led by Trey Harris, who has
Yeah.
pretty much balled out the last couple of years, and he's proven to be one of the best receivers in the country. And then you talked about all those guys that Jackson Dart helped take on in the transfer portal this year. So on the offensive side of the ball, you guys are looking incredibly strong. So do you have anything to say about that receiving core and how they can potentially work with Jackson Dart to create an amazing season?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be fun. Trey Harris, obviously, he got here last year from Louisiana Tech, and I think he was definitely a very sought out guy, but I don't think people truly bought into what he was until we actually saw him into that SEC type of football. And man, did he ball last year. Just one of the best route runners in the country, some of the best catching abilities in the country, and, just a guy that can go out there and really make a catch on any type of ball thrown at him. And he's developed a lot. We've heard a lot of good things from press conferences and from Lane Kiffin specifically as well, kind of just saying that Trey's kind of been the most improved player this offseason from our entire team. And that says a lot considering that he was our number one receiver last year. He was a preseason All-American for this upcoming season. And Trey and Dart definitely created a chemistry last year just in terms of their play. We also returned Jordan Watkins, who was an explosive guy, and he just has a really a good knack for the end zone. We got Juice Wells out of the transfer portal from a transfer from South Carolina. I know a lot of the Carolina fans obviously have a love hate relationship with Juice, but I'm excited to hopefully have him. Hopefully, we get him to 100% right now. I know there's been some news that he's 100%. He's not 100%, so we'll see tomorrow. But I'm glad to have him here, whether we get him now or later on in the season. And so that receiving room, and I can go on as well. Aiden Williams, Caden Lee, we've got a lot of guys that truly have a lot of potential. And I can't leave out our tight end, Caden Prescorn as well. He really made a name for himself last year. Missed a good portion of the start of the season last year, but came into that Alabama game and he just looked really comfortable on the offense, and he gave us a lot of validity in our offense as well. Just opened up the middle of the field a lot better. Was able to get our running game turn. I would say our running game trended in the upper direction when Caden came in and was added a piece to the O line. And so it's going to be fun, man. Like we got Jerkon Squad on that tight ends position too from a transfer from Virginia Tech. So we have the depth, and we as well bulked up that offensive line. And I think that's something that kind of last year separated. Nick Saban said this as well. Kind of separated us from elite and being really good. Is that O line. And the defensive line as well. That's where the trenches are played. That's where the line of scrimmage is made. And if you can win at those, you have a really good chance of getting to the next level. And that's something that we focused on this offseason. I'm really happy if we're doing that as well. So I'm definitely excited just to finally see it all mesh together and see the boys kind of connect in one tomorrow.
Yeah, and you mentioned that uh, a couple of the other main guys on the offense, Jordan Watkins, who in the SEC, he was seventh with 21 catches last year, which is
Mm-hmm.
huge because the SEC, one of the best conferences in the nation. So that's big, especially just having those two guys as a 1-2 punch. You said the
Yeah.
tight end room as well, been amazing. And offensive line, of course, also is going to be a big help to Jackson Dart
Yeah.
and those guys out there. So I think that you guys are pretty set. And I say that the number 2 ranking in the nation is definitely fair for the type of talent you guys have on that roster. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing these guys all play together this year, and it's going to be a fun season. But if we go to the running back room, you guys lost the guy who was labeled as one of the best running backs in recent history for Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you guys have had a lot of talent, you lost Judkins to OSU, and you guys have pretty much filled that hole with someone
Yeah.
that I think that you would agree that you have a lot of faith in Bentley the Fourth. So, how do you think he's going to need to step up this season to take over the role from Judkins?
It's going to be a team effort. I when Quinshawn officially transferred, there were people that were losing their minds about it. I'm like, guys, take a deep breath and have faith in our coaching staff. I've said that for a while because we've seen what they've been able to do here that really no one else has really consistently done in a long time here. And I just said have faith in our coaching staff. Ulysses has shown a lot of great potential over the last few years. I know Quinchon obviously got that nod over the last few years ahead of him, and UB was his number 2 guy last year. But Ulysses has a great explosiveness, reads the lines really well. Is a really great tackle breaker as well, and is a decent receiver for a running back as well. But not only Ulysses, we got guys like Henry Parrish that were brought in as well, and we beefed up that running back room. We have a lot of different options that can give us validity in the end zone. They can get us in punt returns or kickoff returns. Guys that can just block for when we're passing. We have a lot of different guys that can really be successful in different roles. And again, like I said, that means a lot to me because I think not only what we lacked on the line, on the lines of scrimmage compared to other teams last year, we lacked in depth. And Georgia, yes, Georgia has a great starting 11. They have a great starting 11 on defense and offense, but they have depth. They have guys who can come in if a guy gets injured, if a guy gets injured, if a guy gets tired. They have guys who come in that they can play better at different schemes, and that's what we did, focusing on that running back room when Quinshawn left. And we have a lot of different options there that we can now go about to truly give guys time to develop, but as well give different guys the opportunity to do different things. So I can literally go on about the names that we got in the running back room in the transporter this year. I'm not going to talk too long about it, but I'm not worried about it at all. I think those guys have definitely put their marks out in the college football world, but Ulysses has taken over that role as is running back number one now, and I think he's excited to be back here with the squad and as well just take over and show what he can do.
Yeah, and I think you're right that you mentioned early on uh, with the transfer portal, you guys had the best class in the nation. And
Mm-hmm.
to see a guy like Judkins leave, but then you're able to fill the hole pretty quickly, that's really important for a team with an offense as strong as this. You got to be able to plug the holes quickly, which you guys were able to do this off season. And now you're going into this new season with one of the best offensives in the nation. So I'd be very happy as an Ole Miss fan to see this, and I definitely have a lot of faith in what they're doing, especially considering if we go back to last season, they performed very well against conference opponents. They performed well in the Peach Bowl against
Yeah.
Penn State, where they ended up. But it was just those two games, Georgia and Alabama, who were, of course, the powerhouses of the SEC, who Ole Miss seemed to struggle with. And that was really the only two games where you could visibly see that they weren't keeping up pace with these two powerhouses. So, what changes do you think were made this year to try to help keep up with them? And also, do you think now they have what it takes so they're on a like kind of the same level as those teams?
Yeah, I think last year, I'll tell you, to be honest, Andrew, that Bama game really irritated me. It really did, and it still does to this day. I didn't expect to go into Georgia and say we're going to win. I did. I was telling people I thought we may put up a little bit of a fight, but I didn't expect to come out with a win. But that Bama game really did irritate me. I truly thought at that time Bama was all coming off that loss to Texas, coming off a very shaky weekend against USF that weekend. I really thought we had a chance to go out there and just get past that Saban asterisk that Lane Kiffin had, and we didn't. We had a very shaky offensive play call that entire day. The play calls on the offensive side were really shaky. The defense eventually got tired in the second half and kind of collapsed. And that going back to that Georgia game, Lane after that game made a point, and I saw something in him during the post game press conference that I hadn't seen ever. And he just kind of went about what Georgia had that we didn't, and that was just they simply recruited better than we did. They had more 5 stars than we did, and that's just a simple fact about it. And from that moment, I kind of realized that Lane is definitely about to turn the edge on some things. And that's what we did. I think that the coaching staff and Lane are understandable that, look, this is Ole Miss. You know, we don't have the national history that a Bama, that a Georgia, that a Clemson or a LSU, Ohio State, those schools have. And so we have to attack things a little differently. Yes, we did a really good job recruiting in the high school rankings as well this year. But we got to attack that transfer portal. It's there for our use, and Lane has done a really good job over the last few years to do that. And we haven't seen these guys play yet, so we have a really good roster, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have a really good team. So we have a good team right now, but is it going to really play out on the field? So we have to wait to see that. But I think that after that Georgia game, Lane understood what it took in terms of getting different players in, especially on that line of scrimmage. We struggled really bad last year against Georgia on that defensive line. Our guys just were outplayed. They looked tired, and Carson Beck had just the time to cook anything he wanted out there on the field. And that's where we struggled, and that's okay because also did we not need to, try to learn everything in that one game. We had to take different things from a few different games as well. And we beat up that defensive line. I think we got guys that fit Pete Golden's style a little bit better as well in that defense. And we controlled everything that we could in the transfer portal, especially bringing some guys back like Jared Ivey, who's made a really good mark for himself this year, and of course Walter Nolan from Texas A&M and Princely Umama Allen from Florida. Those guys look NFL ready, and I'm glad they're part of my team and not anyone else's now. So I'm excited. I think that defensive line is really going to be important for us. And like we talked about earlier a little bit, Andrew, that offensive line is really going to be important. Jackson's never really had, I'd say, a great offensive line his time here. I think we have that now. I think Coach John Garrison has been here for a second year now. I think the O-line is now comfortable with him. I think we got our transfer guys in earlier in the transfer portal, so now they've had time with Coach Garrison. So I think they have a really good relationship and understand one another on a really good note.
Yeah, and then on the opposite side of last year, I want to talk about two of the best games I saw all year as a college football fan. First of all, the Auburn game, 28-21. Auburn
Mm-hmm.
has always had a strong program. They obviously haven't been ranked the last couple of years, but that was a game that I really enjoyed watching from the Ole Miss side of things because it showed the type of diversity they had on their offense. And I just really enjoyed watching that game. Then the other one, which I think personally is one of my games of the year, Ole Miss LSU. Of course,
Yeah.
LSU with the Heisman winning Jaden Daniels with an elite receiving core, someone that Bama struggled against.
Yeah.
So I guess now I want to hear your thought process when you were watching those two games and kind of how what the response was like at Ole Miss.
Yeah, I'll start that LSU game. Like that was definitely just kind of what you come to SEC school for. That was one of the best moments of my life. It was a stressful game. At one point we were down two possessions going into the fourth, and I was really kind of just struggling to come to tides of what was happening because that was actually the weekend after we had just lost to Bama. And so if we had lost that game, obviously we didn't make it to Atlanta last year for the SEC championship game. But if we had lost that LSU game, we were definitely out of the race. And we came back in that game as well. It showed me a lot of progression from the year before to this past season. Uh, because the year before we wouldn't have won that game. We wouldn't have had enough fight. Jackson wouldn't have had enough fight to continue going out there and come back and win that game. We wouldn't have had enough talent, and I truly believe that our coaching staff had definitely elevated from the year before to be prepared for moments like this, to be prepared for national television, down two possessions in the fourth quarter against a nationally ranked team, against a guy that would go on to win the Heisman Trophy, against a coach that's a nationally relevant coach that just went to the SEC championship game the year before. I saw a lot of progression in that game, and to be a part of it was so fun. It was just kind of relaxing as well. It was stressful, but it was relaxing to win that game because we heard so much outside noise. We couldn't win the big game. We weren't going to be able to do it. Blah blah blah. We ended up doing it, and I kind of questioned rushing the field to be honest, but I ended up doing it just because of the heck of it, and I was so glad I was. And I think that game would honestly put us on the map last year, and we just continued to ride that flow and only lose one more game last year, of course, to Georgia. But it was so fun to be a part of it, and I know I shouldn't say this, but I enjoyed watching Jane Daniels play. He's just a freak of nature, and I'm glad that I was a part to see him play and what he did. I'm glad he lost, but I'm so glad that I was able to see him in that Auburn game. It was a progression game for me too. We haven't beaten Auburn in back to back years since I couldn't tell you. And I know that Hugh Freeze is going through a transition period, and they're going through a lot of changes right now under his staff right now. But I was so unquestioned if really we could go into Jordan Hare, which is one of the most difficult places to win the game, but actually do it. And I saw a full football team last year. And when I say a full football team, I mean offense, defense, special teams. I saw a team come together and for 4 quarters say, we're just simply not going to lose no matter what happens. And I saw a pretty polished game plan on both sides of the ball. And I think we were just well equipped to go into Jordan Hare and win that game. I know everything didn't go our way, but that again, precise to my point of progression. The year before, if everything didn't go our way, I saw our team collapse a lot the year before. But last season, I saw things not go our way, and our guys picked their heads up, and they continued fighting, and it ended up winning us 11 games last year. And so that Auburn game was definitely a fun one for us to watch. I believe that was a really just trenches game, and a lot was decided in the trenches of that team last year between Auburn. And it was just a fun matchup for us because it continued to allow our elevation throughout the rest of that end of the season mark to kind of be a good sprout for us.
Yeah, and with my personal experience, Alabama obviously struggled with Auburn last year. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that Auburn is, I'm just going to say, one of the strangest programs I see in the SEC year after
Yeah.
year because they'll struggle and then they'll randomly be good every once in a while, even though what they have on paper might not show it. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, they're still in the SEC program, they'll still perform, but it was just so weird to experience some of these games over the last couple of years. And then what you're saying about LSU, I'll agree. I mean, watching on TV, on national television, I was stressed for both those teams watching that game. It was, of course, crazy. Jaden Daniels, like you said, performed game after game last year.
Yeah.
But and that fourth quarter was absolutely insane. You said they went in going down by 2 scores, and then they come out with the win. One of the best games, I'll say it again, one of the best games of the season last year. And it's really cool that you got to experience it firsthand there. So It was just amazing.
Yeah, I got some fun videos and pictures from storming the field. I should share them with you, man. It was super fun, man. Like and I never really envisioned myself being at Ole Miss. To be honest, I came here when I was young, just fell in love, and never actually thought I would actually get here and be here. So to be a part of that moment last year was just super special. And I think our team deserved it as well, especially Jackson Dart. I know we kind of talked about him a lot, but there was a lot of slander on him, coming off that 2022 season, us losing the 4 of the last 5 games, losing the bowl game, losing the Bama the week before that last year. There was a lot of tension on him, whether he was the guy or not. Spencer Sanders was here last year. Should Spencer take over? And that game kind of proved that Jackson was the guy. He took the offseason to really work on his craft and be the man up, and he really looked like he could be the guy that could take this program to the next level, and he did against LSU.
Yeah, definitely. But now, if you're looking ahead to this season, I really like what's going on with your schedule. I think you're playing LSU again,
Yeah.
which is definitely going to be a little harder on the road this time.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, they're now without Jaden Daniels. They still, of course, have a strong program. You're playing the new SEC team in Oklahoma home, which I think is also going to be just an absolutely amazing game. Florida, I think, is a bit iffy going into this season. They have the big game against Miami tomorrow, which we'll get to talk about in a second. And then, of course, you're back against Georgia. So, what are you looking for going into the season? What are some key moments that you think Ole Miss needs to take advantage of here, and just kind of what are you looking to see them do in this new season?
Um, yeah, like you said, our schedule's kind of funny looking. Like our first 4 games, you kind of just see it and expect us to dominate. So that's what I do expect. And I think our SEC schedule play is a lot more difficult than people would probably give us props to. We go to South Carolina, which is one of the, I know Shane Beamer has not really developed the team that he wants, but it's still one of the most difficult environments in the country. I know Florida has the most difficult schedule in the country, but going to the swamp and that game will more than likely probably be a night game. Going to the swamp is not going to be easy for any team either. That Kentucky team coming into Oxford, they did had Mike Stoops had a really good transfer portal, bringing in Brock Vandegrift. And even Jason Dumas Johnson from Georgia, they had a really good offseason as well. And even that Arkansas game, Arkansas and Ole Miss, just speaking from being an Arkansas native, they always go back and forth. No matter how bad the other team is, those games are always funky. And then, like you said, the LSU, Georgia, and Oklahoma, I think are kind of just the 3 standout games. I'm really excited to see OU here. I think Brent Venables has done a fantastic job there and obviously has had a lot of changes on the staff this offseason. But I'm really excited to see OU. I've watched OU really closely since I was a kid, and to see Brent come in and take over and just develop his own style that's really never been seen at Oklahoma before has been really fun. That LSU game is my biggest one for me. People have asked me why, and it's for a lot of different reasons. We haven't beaten LSU in Baton Rouge since 2008. Obviously, we want to beat them back to back years. But going to Death Valley is not easy for anyone. And I think Garrett Nussmeier is obviously a little bit of a raw quarterback, but I think he has a really good piece of potential under Brian Kelly. And just being at Death Valley nights at night's not going to be easy. And one thing that that kind of scares me about the LSU game, not scares me, but just I have like a little asterisk next to it. They have a bye week that week before that game against us, and we don't. So we're going into like 6 weeks of straight play, and then we're going to Baton Rouge at a night game, and they have a week to prepare, get rested up, watch film on us, and watch another game on us. So that's one thing that's kind of been in the back of my mind that not a lot of. I've heard one person talk about it, but nobody else has really kind of seen what I've seen about that. So that's something that I look at about the LSU game, that they get an extra week to prepare for us. But I really think that's going to be the game for us. I think going into Death Valley with this squad against that team is truly going to see for me if we're ready for that next level or not. Because that game's before the Georgia game, and right now I'm thinking about Georgia, but I'm focusing on the LSU game. Being in that environment is definitely going to see if we're ready for Georgia or not. Because last year Georgia, respectfully speaking, they kicked our behinds. They did, and I just they come back even hungrier. Obviously, losing that SEC championship game and not making the playoffs, and for a chance to win 3 straight national championships. So Georgia comes in hungry. They're going to come in hungry. They're going to come into Oxford looking to dominate just like they did last year. And so I think that Georgia game will be nationally televised, obviously. And if we end up beating LSU, we'll, I'm sure, game day, college game day, just the whole world being there. And I'm hearing so much about people that aren't even Georgia Ole Miss fans coming in for that game already. So it's obviously going to be that top of the mark game. But I have to focus on that LSU game for so many different reasons. I truly think that that game for us is going to be the game on the schedule for me in terms of, have we truly progressed to be an elite team? Are we truly going in the right direction this season? And I think if we can come out, it could be the dirtiest game, the ugliest game for us ever. But if we come out for a win, for me, I'm going to be happy at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think for LSU, and as you said, it's an away game. Any away game in the SEC is going to be tough for the
Yeah,
away team. So, if I think you're right that that LSU game is really a chance to prove a lot for Ole Miss, things that they haven't, that they weren't really able to prove last year. You guys, of course, every team again is going to have a rough SEC schedule. Every team in the
yeah,
SEC can potentially be a loss for any team. So I think that you guys, I wouldn't say that you got it necessarily easy schedule, but you got teams that you could really prove a lot against, that can
yeah.
really help move you up in the standings, that can really help show the country that you guys are legit, that you guys are going to take a run at the championship this year. So I'm excited to see. I think that you're right. That LSU game is going to be absolutely amazing. Of course, Georgia game is going to be super hyped up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm personally excited for the season, just not as an Ole Miss fan, but this is looking really exciting. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just so far it's been a fun one. Like that Georgia Tech and Florida State game last weekend was fun. I knew Georgia Tech had it in them. They had a really good run in the season last year, and I think a lot of people were kind of undermining who they were coming into this game, and we haven't seen Florida State at this new element after losing so much talent last year, after this past season. So it's going to be a fun one. It's already been a fun one so far. That Colorado game was fun. So it's gonna. I love college football. I can't express that enough. So it's just good to be back in the realm of that.
Yeah, and so the last question I want to ask you about, and this is more of a question about college football in general
Hmm.
as well. 12-team playoff is here this year.
Yeah.
And that's going to allow a lot of teams that haven't seen the playoffs in a while really get to take a shot at the championship. Like I was just saying about Ole Miss with their schedule, and from just what I've seen as an outside perspective at this Ole Miss team, I think that number one, they definitely are probably going to be in the 12-team playoff, and I think that they are also going to take a good shot at the championship this year. So first of all, just what do you think about the 12-team playoff in general, and then how do you think Ole Miss is going to fit into it this year?
I love the 12-team playoff. Obviously, it gives more of a opportunity for schools in general. And when I say that, like, if we get the chance to be a high seed, we can host a playoff game, and that's just good for the school. That brings in more money for us. That brings in more notoriety for us, and that just gets us to a spotlight that we want. And as well, I think that it gives other schools that maybe have been really good, maybe like Penn State over the last few years. Penn State's always been really good, but they can never get over that Ohio State Michigan hump. And now they get the chance to maybe just do a little bit of swiveling into maybe getting closer to a national championship. And going on us, I think we have a good chance. We obviously want to host a playoff game this year, and that's in hope of having a really good regular season and getting a high seed. Like I just said, we really want to host a game here. I think that people outside of the world have heard about the Grove and have heard about how tailgating is here and how really it is a lifestyle here, and it is. And I think hosting a playoff game will truly get to experience that for us, for people as well. And so that's kind of my goal. I'm hoping that 5 or 6 seed. I kind of been going back and forth with myself. Will we make the SEC championship game? Yes or no? I really don't know. I think Georgia will be there. My concern is Texas. They look really good. They look really, really good. And I hate saying that because I really hate Texas with all my heart. But Steve Sarkisian has done a fantastic job in Austin. He's gotten that program. Texas is back, man. I hate to say it, but he's done a really good job just in every aspect of it. He really does. My My applause goes to Steve Sarkisian. He's done a fantastic job. They look really good. They look really, really good. They look confident. They look poised. They look ready to go. Um, they have a really good squad. So that Texas team is that team right in front of us where I'm like, I don't know. But they also have a difficult schedule, and I'd say more difficult than us. They start with a few more. They start with SEC play a little sooner than we do. So we'll see how that goes. I'm expecting us to make the playoffs. If this 12 team playoff was here, over the last 4 or 5 years, we would have made it 2 out of 3 years. So I'm expecting us to be here. I would love to win at least one game. Look, I know we have a squad. I'm not going to be end of the world if we don't win the national championship, but if we don't at least win one game in the playoffs, then I'll probably be a little disappointed.
Yeah, and I guess that you kind of made a perfect segue into the SEC and the stuff there I wanted to talk with you about. You're right that there's a reason Texas and Oklahoma have joined the SEC because they've proven
Yeah,
that they are two of the best programs in the nation. And you're talking about Texas being potentially in their first season a shot at the SEC championship, which is one of the most highly coveted games in the country.
yeah.
So my question for you would be, where are Oklahoma and Texas going to fit into this SEC? Like, where in the standings, and just kind of how are they going to perform in their first year?
I think Texas is going to be fine. I think Steve Sarkisian has experience in this conference, and he knows what it takes to be dominant in this conference. And they have the squad from top to bottom. They really do. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. And they have guys that have been there before. They have guys that have come back like Ole Miss and have just come back for another year for another shot at winning that national championship. Steve Sarkisian has developed himself to be one of the best minds in football over the last few years. And so I think Texas is going to be just fine. They're going to be competing this year for that SEC championship. So they'll be fine. Oklahoma, I think OU will be fine too. Obviously Jeff Levy's gone, and they have to replace him, and they got a new quarterback with Jackson Arnold in there now. So I don't know about OU. I think they can win 9 games, but I think OU can also only win 6 games. So OU is like one of those teams that I think can really reach, 9, 10 games, but could also win 6 games. They're kind of like LSU for me. I think LSU can do the same thing, win maybe 9, 10 games, but they could also win only 6 games. Uh, but the SEC is deep. I think OU can match up pretty good with a lot of good teams, but I think Missouri has come back but with a lot of vengeance and a lot of talent, and Eli Drinkwitz is really looking to make that next step at Mizzou under Brady Cook and Luther Burden as well. So I think, maybe that 6, 7 range for OU right now, which is crazy to say about the University of Oklahoma, just the history they have, even the recent history OU's had in success. But this is the big dogs, man. This is not the Big 12 anymore. And as well, like I said, they're not in a rebuilding stage, but I think they lost a lot more in the offseason than they thought they were going to. So like I said, Jeff Levy's gone, Dylan Gabriel went to Oregon. So they replaced a lot. I think Jackson Arnold's going to be fine, though. I know he's kind of a raw guy, but we've seen what he can do. And I think that, you come into that system, you come into that environment, he's going to be all right. We've seen young guys coming in like that, even a couple years ago at OU with Caleb Williams. And Jackson Arnold's going to be fine. I just don't know how consistent they can be in the SEC, if that's my point.
Yeah, exactly. And with Texas especially, it definitely wasn't, well, for at least Alabama fans, it definitely wasn't the greatest sight to see us being beaten the season before they're about to join our conference. So that's obviously one of the first big issues, and that's something that really tipped SEC fans off that Texas is going to still be a powerhouse even in our conference. So I think that Texas, every SEC school has the right to be scared of them, and I agree with your thoughts about Oklahoma, where they, of course, have a strong program. They have a really, really good Power Five program. But I agree with you that I don't know if their adjustment to this new form of SEC play is going to be as gracious as Texas is. So I think we'll definitely see there. But another big change in the SEC is, of course, Nick Saban's gone.
Yeah.
Alabama now has Kalen DeBoer. We're in a new stage. We have Jalen Milroe as our starting QB, And some people are saying Alabama is done. They're out of the spotlight for now. That's
Nah,
it for the dynasty. Others are saying they still have Jalen Milroe, who's going to take a shot at Heisman. They still have Kalen DeBoer, who's one of the best coaches in the country. What do you think? Is Alabama's reign truly over?
not at all, man. And I say something to add to your point. Kalen DeBoer is one of the best coaches in the country, but he's also one of the best recruiters in the country. And not only is he one of the best recruiters in the country, he's at Alabama. If you're a kid and you're coming up in the high school ranks, I don't care if Nick Saban's gone. You still get to play in front of 100,000 people. You still get to play with a history of over. I think that what you guys have 17 national championships. It's not stopping me from doing anything because Nick Saban isn't there. You guys still have all the NIL connections that any team would ever dream of. I think Kalen DeBoer is going to be just fine. He has done, and I give him his props. He's done a fantastic job this offseason. He retained a lot of players that I did not think he was going to be able to retain. He got a lot of guys in the portal that I did not think he was going to be able to get in the portal. So Kalen DeBoer's done a really good job so far. Obviously, we haven't seen them play yet, so we're going to see that soon. But I think Kalen DeBoer is going to be fine. Him and company are going to be just fine this year. And it's funny because everyone was talking about you hate to be the guy that replaces the guy. Well, he's going to be the guy that stepped into those shoes, and I believe it's going to make him great as well because he has full support from Saban. If you've seen Saban this offseason, he's been there. He's been around the program still. It looks like him and Nick and Kalen have developed a really good relationship over the last few months, and I think that helps a bit just in terms of being a little bit more comfortable, obviously, in a new environment, but obviously being at the head of the standard for college football. So I think Kalen DeBoer is going to be fine. I think Jalen Milroe is going to take a not a step back, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see how he looks in this system now. Because we saw last year what Kalen could do with a quarterback such as named Michael Penix. And I wouldn't say they have similarities, but they have some of the same confidence levels, I believe, and they just aren't scared of anything and really just go out there and to do their best. So I'm excited to see Jalen. Jalen has looked really happy over the offseason, just kind of being around the community a lot more in Tuscaloosa from what I'm seeing. So I think Alabama's going to be just fine. I think they're, I said Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss. I think Alabama's going to be right there behind us. I think they're still going to have that chance of getting to the SEC championship game. Like I said, obviously we haven't seen him yet here, so that's kind of why I put them so far back. But I think Bama's just going to be just fine. Don't worry about him, Nick Saban not being there.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kalen DeBoer's off-season recruiting, use of the transfer portal, stuff like that so far. I don't know if you saw the news story about our new kicker, Graham Nicholson, and the Miami of Ohio thing where their coach was blaming
Yeah,
us for like said that we stole their kicker. I don't know if you've really
yeah.
seen that. Do you have any thoughts about that at all?
No, and even then, man, look, it's always happened, unfortunately, even if that is the truth, and now it's legal. So, look, it is what it is, man. And even for that state, this isn't me throwing any shit or disrespect to Miami, Ohio. But if I got the chance to go play for Bama and I was there, I would do the same thing. So, look, it happens. You know, they stole a couple of guys that were committed to Ole Miss that I really wanted here, and now they're at Bama, not stole, but they've done a really good job recruiting, and a lot of those guys have changed their commitments to Alabama. That's just the way it goes, man. And like I said earlier, you asked me about Saban. That's why I'm not concerned because Kalen's done a really good job recruiting so far. And obviously you can recruiting can only go so far, but we've seen what he can do as a coach on the field. And so look, he's going to be fine. They're going to continue to recruit at a high level, and as well, watch out for what he's able to do in the future. This is just year one. This is just year one. He's just getting started. He hasn't even really touched his feet in the waters yet, and I think he has full support from the school, from the university, from donators to really be elite at the next level.
Yeah, and like you said, Alabama, of course, is always going to be somewhere near the top of the SEC. So is Georgia. They're going to be looking to regroup this year. They lost to Alabama in the SEC championship, and they broke their streak of national championships. Does and you kind of mentioned this earlier, and you were talking about this. is Georgia really going to be able to regroup and get back to where they were a couple years ago in the spot for the national championship?
100%. Carson Beck showed last year that he looks really good. Has one of the best arms in the country. Is really good at reading defenses, and just really seemed to be comfortable in that system last year. And when you get another year, get another offseason under that program, you're gonna be better than you were the last year, hopefully. And so I think they're going to be fine. They added a lot of good transfer portal guys. Trevor Etienne from Florida, obviously that's going to be a not going to be a fun relationship with Florida fans at that Florida Georgia game, but Trevor has been one of the best running backs in the country over the last few years, and so that adds a dynamic not only in running the football, but Trevor's been a really good passing running back, receiving running back as well. Excuse me. So that adds just a little bit more space on their offense. Look, Saban's gone now. Kirby Smart is, for me personally, now going to be the standard for where college football is. Don't worry about Georgia. They're coming back with vengeance. They developed that. They got that O line beef back up. They got that secondary beef back up. They're returning a lot of starters on the offensive side of the ball. They're gonna be ready and hungry to go back and get to the national championship game and win the national championship game. I think Georgia should put fear in a lot of teams' hearts. They look really good. Just kind of seeing just a lot of their practices so far that I've watched from the offseason and how poised and motivated I've seen Kirby Smart talk this offseason. I watched the interview he did with Josh Pate in his SEC media days, and he just seems really ready to go. And I haven't seen him like that since the year they won their first national championship. He looks really just ready to go and ready to attack and improve once again, because he was upset last year after they lost that Bama game in the SEC championship game. He was really upset that he believed they still should have been in the playoffs. And when they believe in the coach like they do in Kirby, that type of ideas and motivation is going to just bleed into the players. And so Georgia are really going to be a team to watch. They're going to be exciting. They're going to be gunning for the national championship for sure.
Yeah, and something I'll always remember about that SEC championship game is not from the game itself, from game day before that. And by the way, I just want to say, so far what I've seen from game day this season, this is we're gonna have one of the best seasons of college game day we have ever
Yeah.
seen. This is gonna be amazing. But Pat McAfee, during that college game day, I remember he sang uh, the Georgia song and then
Hmm.
switched to Alabama, and that's when I was like, all right, we got this now. we're all set. So I was well, of course I was surprised. We weren't the favorites in that game.
Yeah.
So, but Georgia, they're going to be good for the next couple of years or however long Kirby Smart decides to stay. And of course, they're going to keep getting better and better players as the team continues to create a dynasty there. I completely agree with you. They're going to be back competing this year for that championship, but I think that the 12-team playoff can really make it this interesting. So I'm excited to see what happens with that. But I think we also need to talk about the Big Ten a bit because the SEC, all well and good, they are known for being one of the best conferences in football, but so is the Big Ten. They have Michigan, who just won the national championship. They have up and coming programs like Iowa, who is projected to be pretty good this year. I just kind of want to know your thoughts, number one, on the new incoming schools, them being all the way on the West Coast and having to fly over there and all that kind of stuff, because that definitely created a lot of buzz. And number two, who do you think the SEC schools need to look out for from the Big Ten when it comes to the 12-team playoff?
Well, I'll go on your first question. I'm just kind of big on, I don't know, tradition. And so to see SC and UCLA and Oregon in Washington be in the Big Ten is just kind of, I don't know, funky, I guess. Um, so it sucks, to be honest, but it is what it is. That's where we are. And so it's going to be fun. We get Oregon versus Ohio State in the regular season. That's going to be fun. And speaking on Oregon, I'm a huge Dan Lanning fan. I think he's one of the best motivators in the country. I think he has one of the best defensive minds in the country, and I think he has a staff that puts together the pieces that he really wants to be successful. And they got Dylan Gabriel. Obviously, he can be a Heisman finalist this year and show what he could be last year at Oklahoma. And I think he wins the Oregon to prove a point because they have a squad that can now win a national championship. They haven't had a squad like that in almost 10 years. And I think Dan Lanning, you know, obviously was a part of that Alabama talks when Nick Saban originally retired. And I think he said, I'm staying here for a reason. And that's because he believed what could be done at Eugene, Oregon. So they're going to be a fun team to watch. It's where will USC? I just don't know. Like USC could, like LSU earlier, and that I talked about in Oklahoma, they could win 9 games, but they could also win 5 or 6 games. USC comes in with a big question mark. Obviously, Alex Grinch is gone, and they have a new DC, so I don't know about USC. Uh, so the Big Ten is going to be fun to watch. Obviously, Ohio State's gonna they have one of the best rosters in the country, and I think Ryan Day is under a lot of pressure this year to win. I don't think it's enough for to win just the conference championship or get to the national championship game. I really think Ryan Day needs to win the national championship this year, or his job's really in jeopardy. And I believe that because there's been years where you could say they probably should have. A couple years ago against Georgia throttled TCU, but Ohio State really had no business losing that semifinal game to Georgia. They were up big, and they had no business of allowing Georgia to come back and win that game. So Brian Day's had the opportunities to get over the hump over the last few years, and just hasn't. And I say that because I hate the championship mentality talk that it's everything, because I don't believe it is. But it's gotten to that point now where Ryan Day has had the opportunities, and now he has the team, I believe, in the country right now. Obviously, Will Howard's a little bit odd, but everywhere else you can say Ohio State's A plus, A plus, A plus. They've invested the NIL money, they've invested with the squad, and now he has a squad that they want. So it's gonna be fun to see Ohio State. Not too much I don't like Ohio State, but it's gonna be good to see what they do. Michigan loses a lot, so I don't expect Michigan to be in that national championship run. I expect them to win some games, though, and put up a good fight against a lot of good teams as well, though. So don't count Michigan out, but I don't expect them to be in that national championship reign anymore. And don't forget about Penn State. I think James Franklin is under a lot of pressure as well you have this 12-team playoff now. You got to get in. You gotta. I believe they're kind of the same marks as us. Last year they lost to Michigan, Ohio State. Ole Miss lost to Georgia, Bama. Though those are some of the top 2 teams in the country, top 4 teams in the country. And now you have this opportunity with 12-team playoff to do more essentially. And I think James Franklin is really under that spotlight. I think Penn State fans are not fed up, but are tired of being the 10 win squad and losing 2 games. They want an 11-1 season. They want a 12-0 season. They want a chance to get within arm's reach of that national championship. So the Big Ten is definitely going to be fun. You can't count out Iowa either, like you said earlier. They obviously bring in one of the best defenses in the country again. That offense is just going to be a question mark every year. So we're going to see how much validity they have, and so it's the Big Ten's actually going to be a lot more fun now that I speak about it than I actually think. They have a lot of deep teams now with those newer coming teams, and Washington's going to be cool to see. I think with a new head coach, and I think they have a little bit of a chance to do a little bit of win some games they probably shouldn't, but I don't think they'll have a good run.
Yeah, the one thing that the Big Ten I think did right with all these new teams joining is at least they kept pretty much the original intro, and that's all I cared about with the Big Ten, that they kept the intro song and the map and stuff. So that was great to see. I agree with you though. Big Ten is going to be really really fun, and
Yeah.
I'm from Jersey.
Hmm.
Rutgers. I have a lot of friends who are Rutgers fans, and they had that win the other day against Howard. Of course, it's against Howard, but I think that they definitely uh, showed that they are going to perform this year. They have a big blackout game coming up soon against I don't even, maybe Illinois it might have been. They have UCLA coming here in a couple weeks, so
Hmm.
uh, I definitely have heard a lot of optimism around them, especially from a lot of my friends. So maybe we'll see something going on there. But I agree with you. There's so much going on in the Big Ten, just like the SEC, and I just think college football this year is just going to be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Rutgers and even like Illinois, there are those teams that you don't expect them to make a lot of noise, but they could definitely win some games that people probably shouldn't expect them. I know Brett Bielema is looking to kind of find some consistency at Illinois. So hopefully him and company can get some things done. But I think that I think there's going to be a year of a lot of shakeups. Like I think you're going to see a lot of teams that come into those crashings of the top 10, top 15 teams and win games that they probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I guess what I would want to ask you is we've seen the last couple of years, we've seen this happen with TCU, we've seen this happen with Cincinnati. Who do you think is going to be that one sleeper team that's going to end up making it pretty deep into number one into the 12 team playoffs or then go past the first round?
It's a really good question, man. Sleeper team. Hmm. I
I,
honestly
I
have
was
to think
thinking
about that.
I was thinking about this earlier and I was looking at some ACC schools mostly because I think
That's
that
where my
they
mind went.
have definitely been unrepresented in the last couple of years in just the playoffs period. Um, Honestly, from what I saw last week with Georgia Tech, I think number one, they're going to be ranked soon, and number two,
Hmm.
I took a look at their schedule and it looked possible to be able to do something with that. Uh, but I think if you look to the ACC especially, there's a lot of teams there that could potentially do something.
I like that. Honestly, I do. I'm really high on Georgia Tech. Like I can't express that enough. I got this. They played Ole Miss last year, and Haynes King looked new to the system as he was coming in for the first year last year, but I saw he had some potential and had a lot of heart. And like I said, they finished the season last year in a really good run. And to see them win that Florida State game was obviously huge, but I think it showed a lot of character for where their coaching staff and their players are for this year. So I love that pick, Andrew. It's actually a really good pick. I think they have a lot of opportunities at home as well because some of the more difficult games are played at home instead of the road. So I think Georgia Tech has a really good chance. I like that actually. I was gonna say Missouri, even though they're not really a sleeper team, but I feel like Missouri is not just the team that everyone's talking about. But I also think that Missouri has a lot of talent. Obviously, they won the Cotton Bowl last year against Ohio State, so they're coming off a high run. So that's what I was thinking. But I love the Georgia Tech take. I really do.
Yeah, I think with Missouri, I mean, I watched their first game, and well, it was a pretty shaky game all the way through, especially against a FCS school. But I agree, and I like where they're ranked for the beginning of the season, and I think that they're
Yeah.
gonna stay in the conversation for potentially moving up. I like their schedule as well. Yeah, I really like that one too. But if I was looking at just completely unranked schools, I would definitely be taking Georgia Tech as someone who could definitely
Yeah.
potentially do something. And me personally, I'd love to see them. So we'll see. Uh, Another school that's been under a lot of pressure, Colorado. They, of course, they've been the spotlight of college football past 2 years.
Hmm.
Last year, Vince, my co-host, is not here today. Had a lot of he was really hyping them up a lot. He jumped on that bandwagon, and I always remember we filmed after that one Stanford game, and that was when I think we realized last year maybe not. Now Shadur Sanders once again in the Heisman talks. Travis Hunter once again Heisman talks. And yesterday they started off with an interesting game, especially the first half of it. Of course, it did actually come down to the last play. The guy caught it on like the 5 yard line or whatever. But first of all, Shadur Sanders, is he going to be a Heisman winner or in the top three for Heisman voting this year?
Uh, Probably. I think Shadur definitely has the talent to do so, and I think last night showed that they have the weapons to be able to allow him to put up impressive numbers. I think a big thing for Shadur is just can he be protected? Like last year, he simply wasn't, and I think they got some transfer portal guys on that offensive line. But I watched that North Dakota State game last night, and I saw improvements, but I didn't see enough for me to sit here and say Shadur is going to be comfortable enough to sit back there when he needs to at times and make plays happen. Uh, but I'll say this about Colorado. I think people don't understand where they really came from. And when I say that is, yes, everyone's talking about them, all eyes are on them. But a few years ago, who was talking about Colorado? What? Nobody was looking at Boulder. Nobody was thinking about Boulder. They won one game the year before Deion Sanders was there. So for me, winning 4 games last year, I know it's a disappointment in a lot of people's eyes, but winning 4 games after coming off one, completely overhauling that roster, that was improvement for me. That you could say that Stanford game they should have won. They should have, and that would have been a fifth win. But for me, I've seen improvement from them. Now they're in a new conference. A lot is still changing with that coaching staff. Again, a lot of overhaul on that transfer portal. So look, yes, they need to. I would, for bearing stake of social media, probably try to win 6 games to get into a ball game at least. But I'm not expecting them to win 10, 11 games. I'm just not. That's just like simple reality. I don't think that they have a squad ready for that. I think Travis Hunter is one of, if not the best players in college football. Watching him last night, just kid's ridiculous. To be able to do that on both sides of the ball, and not only just put him in for a few plays, but do it basically the whole game, ridiculous. And I think they have some good threat options on the offensive line, in the receiving room as well. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to get them over the hump in terms of being a national prominent team.
Yeah, and the hype is real. I wouldn't be surprised if someone looked at the numbers of how many people were watching that game last night, if that
Yeah.
was one of like the top most watched like FCS FBS games in history. That I mean, I was watching that game. I was laughing, number one, at that interception off the guy's foot in the end zone. I was like, all right, so it's going to be like this again. Um, and then I ended up liking what I saw from, mostly the offensive side of the ball, because I think the defense still needs to get some work done and keep improving, especially during the
Yeah.
2 minute drill time. Uh, but I like what I saw. I think that for the amount of hype that's surrounding them, I think that they should have had a more comfortable win here. But great game to watch for us fans, and I guess we'll see what happens. I agree with you that 6 wins would be a really good threshold, especially for a bowl game. And I think a bowl game would really prove something for them this year. But people are still out there expecting them to win 11 games this season, which we know is not going to happen with the state of this team. So I think we need to keep looking for the future. Of course, Shadur and Travis probably going to the draft this year. We'll see how that goes for them. And of course, Shadur being a Heisman favorite. It's going to be an interesting season once again. I just think that the hype may end up catching up to them again. So we'll see, though.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine though. Look, that Big 12 conference is honestly wide open though, so you never can know what's going to happen with the Big 12 now that Texas and OU are gone. So I wouldn't count them out. Like you said, the defense did look a little questionable last night, but I'll say this as well. North Dakota State has been one of the best FCS programs in the last 15 years. As long as I've been alive, they've always competed and won national championships at the FCS level, excuse me. I know that's obviously not the Power Five, the Division One, but they put up a good fight, and that's kind of what I expected them to do. I know Colorado is, like I said, they rehauled the roster, so last night was the first time that all of those guys actually got to sit there, play with one another, make sure they knew the play calls and understood how that game works with one another. But I think they'll be just fine. I don't know exactly how well they can be right now, but I think they'll be fine, man.
Yeah, me too, definitely. So, last thing I kind of want to talk about is week one, or week 0 to 1. I want to talk about more in depth some of the games that have already happened, and then kind of look at some of the big games coming up this weekend to round out this amazing college football conversation. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about Georgia Tech, Florida State. What a game that was! First of all, the hype around it. Game Day did an amazing job with it. Broadcasters did an amazing job with it. And FSU definitely did not do an amazing job overseas there in Ireland. So, first of all, I want to ask, we talked about Georgia Tech a bit, but FSU, where is their future going? Where are they heading this season? Because me personally, I'm not seeing anything really looking great in their future.
Well, this is just me being honest. I haven't. really thought their offseason was that great, coming off last year and just getting throttled by Georgia in the Orange Bowl. So I didn't think they were going to be too effective. But let me say this as well. Yes, they lost to Georgia Tech. But as we talked about earlier, there's a 12-team playoff now. So losing one game at the start of the season doesn't mean everything is should be collapsed for Florida State and Florida State fans and everything's over. It's not. Okay? You have the rest of the season to understand what just happened, rewatch film, take things, move about them differently. Now, how they do it for the rest of the season is up to them. I don't know where Florida State is going to go. I've watched DJU, and I haven't seen him progress. I just haven't. Not since he was at Clemson, not since he was at Oregon State. I just haven't seen him progress, and I think Mike Norvell has a lot of head coaching decisions to make this season. And we're going to truly see what a team under pressure and under scrutiny is going to look like, because that's what they're under right now. I mean, look, you come off last season and you should have gotten in the playoff, and now you lose the first game. Now you're facing adversity, and it's all about how you answer to that. And so it's going to see how they play out for the rest of the season. I I think they'll be okay. I think they still can be all right. Like I said, that 12-team playoff will be able to help things like that. I think they'll be okay. But in terms of reaching there and getting far, I don't think they're going to be able to get too far, though.
Yeah, I think that honestly, and of course, there were a lot of fights about Bama, FSU, who deserved to be in the playoffs last year, stuff like that. I really think them not being selected really did set something off within their ranks where they're like, well, what's the point? And I think we saw that in the Georgia game last year. Of course, Georgia was the better program. They were going to beat them anyway, but that was embarrassing to watch. And then this year, I didn't really see much of a fight in this game. I didn't see anything that, as a FSU fan, I would even be optimistic about. So I think that they definitely need to reassess. They need to see that they can actually make it to the playoffs this year, that they can make a push at the national championship like they were robbed of last year. And I think that they just need to regroup, reset, forget last year, forget this game against Georgia Tech, and move on and work their way through the schedule.
Yeah, like you said, I don't. This shouldn't be a breaking point for FSU fans. I think if anything, this that Georgia Tech game should be a kind of a tap to the chin to just understand. Okay, it's real now. And we really have to understand where things are going to go if we want to have a chance of getting to where we want to be this season. Like I just said, I have a lot of question marks about Mike Norvell's team. Can they run the ball effectively? Can they get DJ time to pass the ball effectively? Are his receivers effective enough in big game situations? I watched their secondary, and although they didn't give up that many points, I watched them playing a lot of confusion against Georgia Tech. So I don't know about Mike Norvell's squad. I think that they can do something in the deep run of the postseason, but right now, I didn't believe in it from their offseason, recruiting, and I right now, obviously, I'm not going to believe it just coming off a loss. So
Uh, yeah, I would say so. Some losses can be devastating, but week one, you got to regroup, move on. Like I said, see what happens there. Second big game, one that hasn't happened yet, Clemson, Georgia. The thing about Clemson is you saw the Trevor Lawrence days. And then I haven't. I mean, of course, I have actually heard about them. I've seen their games the last couple of years, but compared to what they were doing during that Trevor Lawrence era, Clemson hasn't been the same since he got drafted. So Clemson now number 14 in the nation this year. Again, chance, like we said, this 12-team playoffs really means a lot. Chance for them to make it back, make the push again, but they're starting off against Georgia. And as you said, Georgia is going to be back. They're going to be hungry for these wins. Who do you think is coming out on top here, being honest? And of course, Georgia is the better program. They're the best program. But do you think Clemson has a shot at this one?
I do. I think Georgia's going to win the football game, but I think Clemson's going to put up a good fight. I expect Clemson to win this ACC championship and make the playoffs this year. And I know all the talk's been about Dabo not getting a single player out of the transfer portal, but they've recruited the high school level really good. And I know that's not the talked about circumstance anymore in today's college football world, but that's still important. And that's still key number one if any coach should be in recruiting. And I think Dabo still did a fantastic job of that. They brought back a lot of key pieces on both sides of the football. I think Clemson's going to be just fine. I think, honestly, that is a team that people are looking at like, no, but Clemson can really be a big yes. I think Clemson has a chance to do some damage. Now, again, they probably won't beat Georgia, but like I said about Florida State, you got the 12-team playoff. One loss is not going to kill teams anymore. It really isn't. Even two losses, maybe three for some teams, isn't going to be able to kill teams anymore for a chance to make that playoff team 12-team playoff. Excuse me. And when you get into that playoff situation now with 12 teams, you don't know what can happen. Anything can happen in these circumstances. So I wouldn't count out Clemson even if they were to lose again to Georgia.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. I think Clemson has. I haven't really looked at their schedule too much. First of all, I feel like just the ACC. I haven't really looked at a lot. If I'm looking at their schedule, Clemson, I wouldn't. I see them making a good push. They play NC State. They play Florida State, which I think is going to be a really good game. October 5th. Play Wake, Pitt, and South Carolina to end out the year. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I think Clemson definitely can make a push. 12-team playoff. I'll say it again. Um, but I think you're right. Georgia will most likely come out on top, but there's a way for Clemson to still regroup from this one.
Yeah, I think Clemson will be fine. I think a game like this in the national media as well will just give them a chance to prove what they can do. And as long as they put up a fight, I think they'll be fine in the long run.
Yeah. Next one. Miami, who I am so excited to watch this year. I've liked everything I've seen this offseason. I like how their schedule looks. And then a team who I definitely do not like how their schedule looks, Florida. They're definitely in a tough position. I think that these games at the beginning of the season for them are going to be the hugest before they go play Tennessee, Ole Miss, Georgia, whoever else they're playing. Um, but I think that this is going to be a tight one in the swamp as well. It's going to be a fun game. But what do you think about this one?
I think Cam Moore has something to prove. I think Miami has gotten a lot of bad rap just based off their offseason, what Cam Moore has been through. And some of those games last year, obviously that Georgia Tech game is kind of notorious for what they did in the final minutes and end up losing that game. I expect Miami to come out and gun. I really do. I expect them to come out and try to shove it down Florida's throat and just kind of end the game before it starts. Now, do I think that will happen? I don't know. I think Florida, people look at Florida like that schedule, blah, blah, blah. I think Florida's not as bad as a lot of people think they are. I think they have a pretty good quarterback room. I think they have some depth at a lot of good positions. I think Florida's going to be a pretty decent team now. Their record may not show because of the hectic schedule they have, but I think Florida's fine in terms of depth wise. So expect this Miami and Florida game to actually be a little bit of a tug of war. I think it may be a high scoring game, but I think Miami will come out in a close, high scoring game in that one. It's going to be a fun football game. That's one of the games that I'm really excited to see because both teams bring a big piece of differences that we haven't seen from each other in a while.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's definitely going to be a good game. Notre Dame, Texas A&M. First thing I'll say about Notre Dame, they need to be in the playoffs again. And again, 12-team playoffs going to make a difference again this year. I want to see them in that setting. I want to see if they have what it takes to be with these guys. Of course, they're an independent team. They're not in one of these major powerhouse conferences. They're not playing these guys every day. But Texas A&M, I have not enjoyed anything I've seen from Texas A&M in the last couple of years. They've really struggled against big teams, against small teams. And I think that this game tomorrow is going to be a big point for them because Notre Dame, in my opinion, is beatable. So I don't know if you agree with that, but just what do you think about this one?
It's gonna be fun. I'm excited to see Mike Elko and company and his return to College Station and to see what A&M is gonna look like. I think they are put into a notice that a lot of that I probably wouldn't. I think they're gonna be a good team, but I think that they face a lot of battles that maybe I don't know if they're ready for yet in year one under Mike Elko, and so it's going to be a tough battle for against Notre Dame. That I think Notre Dame is going to be a pretty polished team, uh, and I think they're going to try to give it to A&M. I think that this is their proving point, like you said, not really in the conference to prove that a lot. So I think this is going to be, excuse me, their proving point to say SEC team, bring them on. We got this. And, they're coming off of a good piece of scrutiny over the last few years, especially how some of their games played out last year. So I think Notre Dame has a point to prove. And I'm not sure how Mike Elko and company are going to be able to go after game one.
Yeah, we'll see. I think last year the big Notre Dame game that I watched was against Duke, and I was really rooting for Duke there. I wanted to see them go a lot farther than they did. I wanted to see them outperform Notre Dame, but they were just better. Sam Hartman proved it, but now they're in a new stage once again, and will definitely be interesting to see what they'll do. Last one, Sunday game before the NFL season starts. They could get away with this one. USC, LSU. We've talked a lot about LSU. We've talked a bit about USC. It's going to be a really good game. Excited to watch this one. Who's coming out on top?
I'm going to LSU, and it sucks because I feel like both teams really can't lose this game, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like both these teams really need to win. Maybe USC a little bit more than LSU because, it's crazy how quickly Lincoln Riley was up, and now it's like he's just going downhill. So they really need this win. But I think Brian Kelly and company have a decent team. I obviously Jane Daniels is gone, but I think they brought in a new defensive coordinator. I think they attacked that defense a little bit better. Harold Perkins has got some help all around him now, which will allow him to be a little bit more free and play more freely. And he's been when he has the ability, he's been one of the best defensive players in the country. And like I said earlier, I think Gary Nussmeier is going to be just fine. A guy that sticks it out in one school for that long in today's college football, has a lot of heart, has a lot of gut and character, and I'm excited for him. And he's waited for this opportunity for a long time at LSU, and he's finally gotten that opportunity. And so I'm expecting him to know the playbook, know the system pretty well, and be really urgent to go out there and show what he can prove to the college football world. USC is in a bit of a question mark. I don't know where to go about USC. I think Lincoln is a really good coach. I think he's one of the 10 best coaches in the country, and I think he's one of the best offensive minds I've ever seen. But he hasn't been able to do what he should be doing at USC so far. And you can sit here and say, "Oh, it's only been 2 years." Well, in 2 years at OU, he had two playoff appearances. So I don't know where to go about Lincoln Riley. I think their new DC from UCLA, I can't think of his name on the top of my head, but I think it's an improvement from Alex Grinch. I just don't know how much of an improvement it will be in terms of being able to sustain a 9 to 10 plus win season for them. So I don't know how to go about USC, but I'm taking LSU for the win in that game.
Yeah, I think you're right about both teams needing this. USC is straddling on the edge of even being a ranked school at this point, and LSU is doing LSU things. They're going to have an LSU type season, so they definitely need this win here. It's going to be a really fun game. It's going to be a really fun weekend. One last quick question. If you've gotten a chance to play the NCAA game or seen anything about it, do you have any quick thoughts about it?
I haven't played it, man. My gaming days are unfortunately behind me, man. I'm at that point in life where college is kind of colleging, and I don't have the time I'd like to really play it yet. And I'm sitting here, my whole desk setup. Like I still have my PS3 up here, my PS4. So like if I do touch it, I'm touching old stuff just for the nostalgia. But I'm not much of a gamer anymore. I've seen some gameplay of it. It doesn't look horrible. I think there's some tweaks that definitely need to be done. But in general, for me, even though I'm not playing it, I'm still just happy that we have that. I did play the 14 and 13, 12, 11 in NCAA games, and what fun those were growing up. And I still have them, sitting over there in my cabinet. But it was super fun playing those growing up. So to even have that environment back is super duper fun. I think the players deserved it. They deserved it 10 years ago. They deserve it now. And I'm glad we've got the opportunity to even have that. Because, look, when it shut down after NCAA 14, I didn't think we were ever going to get it back. That's just me being honest. And so to be able to actually have it is super fun. And it looks pretty good, honestly. Like I said, there's some tweaks. Like I've seen some things that are a little bit unrealistic, and some guys breaking too many tackles and doing a little bit too many spin moves. But I also think they nerfed that a little bit. But no, it looks good, and it's fun to have it back, man. That's actually a really good question.
Yeah, I was too young personally to really play NCAA 14, and then of course I've been without that, and I've been left with like modded videos of like the new stuff and whatever people are posting on YouTube. Uh, I was
Mm-hmm.
really excited about this. This was my first NCAA game. This is uh, I just really enjoyed it. I think they did a really good job. You're right. Tackling is a little off in this game. So is spin moves and jukes and hurtling, whatever. You're right. They did nerf it a bit, taking a bit like taking away a bit more of your energy or whatever. But I really enjoy it. Enjoy everything that they've done with this game, and it's been amazing. But I'm so excited for the season. Good luck to Old
Yeah,
Miss. Good luck with all of the stuff that you're going to be
appreciate it, my
doing this
man.
season. Yeah, and thank you so much for joining me. We'll put all your links in the description on Instagram and everything. And definitely, you have some amazing interviews that I've checked out over the last couple months. So if anyone's interested in some Ole Miss college sports stuff like that, definitely go check out stuff. And thank you so much for joining me.